Yeah. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. I'll see that right. Okay. Good. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are we staying for waiting purposes? Do you guys know if it's waiting?
Oh, no, that's just the next one.
That's okay. No worries. I was like, that looked maybe strategic, like I was holding the screen. We are up live right now. Let's go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay? We'll get started here in just a moment, if we may. Great. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Marcus Pochner. I want to thank you for joining us for our quarterly updates on the Uplands. I want to acknowledge before we get started a couple of things. One, thank you all very much for coming out tonight. We appreciate your participation and continuing to learn about this project, and we think our responsibility to report back to all of you. I want to be very clear, we're going to hear from a number of speakers tonight, but I also want to acknowledge the partners from the city are here. The city suggested this meeting, has co-hosted this meeting in many ways with us, and has a number of people here, professionals here to answer any questions that may come up from the city side. So I just want to particularly thank the city for their participation in this as well. If we can go to the next slide. I think the other thing I want to note particularly is I also want to just say before we get started to thank Crown Point Academy for hosting us, for having this meeting here. I will ask something. We're starting right at 5:30. We're going to ask to try to conclude right at 6:30 and then actually leave the facility because the people stay here extra to allow us to have this community meeting. We really appreciate that. But if we want to have additional questions or discussions, we'll do those outside so they can lock up and move out of Crown Point. So again, thank you very much. Again, I'm Marcus Pochner. I'm going to be joined tonight with two other primary presenters on this presentation. Bonnie Nizelik from Peak Development and Todd Johnson. You'll hear from Todd in just a moment from Terraforma. Again, a number of great partners here from the city. You'll hear from them. We'll try to work through our slides so we're able for question and answers to really go through that information. Next slide. Folks, this is our agenda. What we want to cover, we want to be very predictable about where we're going, and then we have about 40 slides. We're going to work quickly. We'll come back to your topics. Meeting guidelines, the vicinity map, talk about the neighborhoods, the planning process. Then we're going to talk master engineering review, overall site, and then neighborhood engineering. We want to break it down from the overall site-wide neighborhood engineering to the neighborhood. Then we'll transition to questions we've heard, things we've heard from you, try to address those, and then go to Q&A. Next slide, please. All right, this is meeting guidelines. We do it. I think we're all respectful here. We work through this process. We will do so much better if we just raise our hand, go through it. We need to give you time to ask questions and we can answer them. We'd be happy to go through it. Again, thanking Crown Point. We'll try to move out at 6:30 so they can go home for the evening as well. I will say we try to put as much as we can up on the Uplands website, and we have a number of other community meetings, but this is on infrastructure, and we really want to address infrastructure and planning issues related to that. Next slide. We'll get there. A couple other things as we transition to that. It may have frozen there. I'll do just one last thing here on the vicinity map. I think we all know, if you go up one, Jacob, just to show overall Uplands. We'll probably talk about all of these neighborhoods here, but just thinking of all the parcels, right? We sit right here at Crown Point today off of Federal and 86, but to understand how this is certainly a real part of Shaw Heights, Observatory Heights, all of the neighborhoods here from Lowell to Federal and then actually east of Federal as well. So those are all the neighborhoods. Again, this is Bonnie Nizelik. Bonnie will now talk about the neighborhood update on this slide and some of the background on that.
Absolutely. So like Marcus said, we're going to start with the neighborhoods that are in the planning process. So kind of starting from planning, going into engineering. So these two highlighted neighborhoods you see here today, A2 and B1, those are two neighborhoods that have gone through the full planning process. They've been approved by City Council. So we'll just walk through each of those real fast. Next slide. Okay. So here's our first one, V1. So this is at 84th and Lowell. So we have a total of 82 homes. It's a mix of single family detached and paired homes. Here's the A2 neighborhood. So this is at the southeast corner of 87th and Lowell.
Sorry, Bonnie.
We can go to the next one.
Next one. Next one.
So this is the A2 neighborhood. So this is the southeast corner of 87th and Lowell. So this was approved by City Council last fall. This is a mix of single family detached homes, duplex homes, and townhomes. Next one. Now we're going to focus on these two areas that are highlighted in yellow, A4 and C2. So these are nearing the end of the planning process. If you go to the next slide. We'll start with A4. So this is located at the northeast corner of 84th and Lowell. So this went to Planning Commission last week. It was unanimously recommended for approval. This is also a mix of single family detached, duplex, and townhomes. So this one will go to City Council on March 25th. Next slide. This one is C2, so this is located in the far northeast portion of Uplands. So the north street of this neighborhood is 88. The western street is Decatur. This is 247 affordable homes. It is a mix of, let me see, 40 to 80% AMI. So AMI is area median income. So trying to provide a mix of housing within Uplands. So this is more affordable for construction workers, teachers, librarians, designers and artists, bank tellers, nurses, firemen, police officers, things like that.
Just a note on this, on the affordable housing, across all of Uplands, there's a requirement in our PDP for approximately 300 units of affordable housing, meaning deed restricted. This is the first part of that we're bringing forward, as Bonnie detailed, again, going to Planning Commission next week on the 27th. So we always try to tell you, anticipating what you may be seeing or receiving community notices about, right? As you go through this process, this goes through Planning Commission and City Council here at the next council.
So the hospital is over right on the edge of this over here.
Just the south, correct. Next slide. Next we have, so there's, you can see there's 4 parcels that are highlighted in purple. So those are parcels that are going through the city's concept review process, or just completed the concept review process and are just starting the official development plan process. So those are neighborhoods that you'll see coming to public hearings probably later this year. And then the 2 in orange on the east side of Federal, those are also in the planning process, but they did not go through that concept review process in front of City Council. So those will also likely go to hearing later this year. And then again, just giving a heads up of what's coming. D1 and A3 in this light orange color, those are just beginning the city's concept review process. D1 is likely going to concept review in March. And then A3 will likely go to concept review in, I believe it's April. So those we'll present those to City Council, get some high level comments, and then start preparing formal drawings for the official development plan process.
One thing we may just talk about is that overall, and I think a lot of you know this, we have gone through kind of the generalized planning process for all of Uplands. What you're seeing here is going through each individual, each respective neighborhood process. So that's why we wanted to be sure and show you in detail the process that they're going through. As Bonnie said, the city review process, they actually adopted a new process, and that's why we're showing all these different colors. It is true, there are a number of neighborhoods that are working through that process, but based on the underlying general plan that's in place. So we'll talk a little bit more about those. But again, tonight we're not talking about neighborhoods, right? We're talking about the infrastructure that's associated to these neighborhoods. Next slide. I think this makes a transition here again from that neighborhood planning, right? That is a formal process that we engage with the city and the planning commission. Now to the master engineering. I want to be really clear. I'm not an engineer, but I'm going to talk about some of the slides. We have a number of engineers here that'll go through it. Next slide. By the way, Jacob's doing a wonderful job on our slides. This is a very large file, and so you have to be really delicate or it's going to jump a few slides. So that is what is happening. This is a slide that I wanted to show to all of you. We showed it before, but it details from the preliminary development plan, what are the requirements that Uplands, we as a development team, have site-wide, right? And maybe it's on-site or off-site. And this actually shows some of those improvements. In red, you see the sanitary sewer improvements, okay? Just the color, blue is water improvements. A lot of those are interior to our site, bringing water to the site. There's also some off-site improvements there. And then green is storm drainage. I also want to be sure and note here, this agreement, this $40 million that we are spending was on specific improvements that was negotiated as part of the process with the city. Some of these are denoted by improvements by the city, meaning the work is done by the city or their contractors, but funded by Uplands. We wanted to be sure and split that off. Again, those are all improvements that were part of the PDP. Next slide. Next slide, John. We're going to go to the end. Yes. I'll come back to that little red dot right down there at the bottom of the screen. I'll come back and bring that up. This is a couple of things. And again, if you could please hold all questions for the end so we can work through that. PDP, a few of these public improvements, just showing them in a little more detail. We're going to talk tonight about Shaw Boulevard and the improvements here on the downstream storm drainage. We actually have a few neighbors that are here from Shaw Boulevard. We'll show a couple of additional slides about that process in that area. Next slide. Here's the other improvements as we walk through again. This shows all of that map, the white, or the blue, the improvements here, the green here on Shaw Boulevard, and the new light right outside here on 86th and Federal to make that a full movement intersection. These are planned site-wide improvements that we are going through and working through all the respective approvals and agencies to garner those. This does not go back to Planning Commission or City Council. This is part of a site-wide infrastructure process that we're showing you and really trying to share construction details and schedules with you tonight. Next slide. Again, we'll show this and we'll have this slide. If you have signed up, we'll also be able to have this so you can go through it. Something we always like to show, we think of infrastructure so much below ground, right? We think of a lot of that roadway widths, utilities, water, all the things. But also on top of that is the pedestrian and kind of the fabric of the neighborhood. How do we connect from existing neighborhoods, Observatory Heights or Heights around the site? How are we making these connections into that? That's part of the process as well. And so we really have created this image so everyone can see the planned sidewalks and trail network that develops around this site. We go through, as you can see in red here, that's on 88 and it comes down Lowell here. That's a 10-foot concrete multi-use trail. So adding pedestrian infrastructure to this site, we think that is just as important. It allows the connectivity from your existing neighborhood, perhaps transitioning into the site and vice versa. We want you to be able, these are public parks, right? This is a 11-acre park, 10-acre park, to really have those opportunities to share in those amenities and to have a full and complete neighborhood. It also shows you that today this fabric doesn't exist. As you all think of Lowell, on the east side of Lowell today, there are no sidewalks, there's no landscaping, there's no curbs. It just falls off there. We are bringing all of that in. If you could please not interrupt as we go through this presentation, I would really appreciate it. This also shows pedestrian and bike infrastructure. This shows a lot of those developments. I would just kind of point you to the blue and purple, even on the lights. That shows new infrastructure that's coming in. So here you see a new crosswalk, the new lights, the new planned lights here, really seeing that fabric come all the way. So this is one you may want to look at afterwards. We'll keep this slide up so you can look at it in more detail. Next slide. This shows, I think, something that we're really proud of, and I think, frankly, community should be more proud of. This is what the community really talked a lot about, was having parks and open space on the site, and something the city of Westminster, I think, does than any other surrounding community a much better job of having public land dedication. land dedicated to the city for the city and you all to plan and utilize. And there was a lot of discussion when we started about having these major parks, these kind of key parks in this site. So here, right by the two schools, kind of thinking of this civic corridor up here, a central park, a gathering place where there are remarkable views across that. Again, another open space, and then protecting open space here and view corridors, really important view corridors looking to the west, and really this view corridor that all of us who grew up in Colorado think about a lot, looking back to the city, protecting those. So we are not changing, we'll never change these numbers. This is the public land dedication to the city, just over 34 acres, and then 6.35 acres into view corridor. So again, just over 40 acres of the site. Next slide. I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because it is dense, it has a lot of things, but we just want you to understand the process and how thorough, how many different levels that we go through. So I just want to read the title here. This says documents approved through the public process. We all understand the process of development. We work in a lot of different places, but going through this, these are the things. The PDP, the preliminary development plan, guides all of this and sets the structure for that. As parts of that, then we have traffic impact study, a master utility study, a master phase 1 drainage report. We go through all of these processes and they're approved through a public process. From that, as happens in every jurisdiction, you then have administrative approvals that come after that. The next phase, some of those things. So here, on-site grading and erosion control, that's approved. That's something that happens then with staff and approval agencies as you go through it. And here we've really detailed a lot of those documents and where we're at in the process. Todd Johnson's here now from Terraform to talk about the next number of slides, but a lot of his is the phasing of the infrastructure improvements, and they're related, that phasing of course is related to the construction approval. We can't start until we have some of those approvals, and we'll go through that. So next slide, and Todd, maybe you step up here as well.
Good evening, everyone.
See the first slide.
All right. You saw this last fall, and we've updated it just to account for where we are currently. What you're seeing out there today is that you're seeing the grading operations going on, and those will continue really through the spring here. There'll be some minor modifications that we're doing in some of the other areas, but we really progressed from the eastern or western side of the project over to the eastern side. So we should be wrapping that up no later than the summer coming up here. And then we've got the different roadways, the major roadways that we have, and when we may be starting these different elements within the infrastructure improvements that we're going to make on these roadways. So an example, on Lowell Boulevard, utility construction, we have some sanitary sewer that we need to upgrade. There's some minor water improvements that we're going to be doing there. Those will probably happen, you know, starting in a couple of weeks here. We're actually going to, on Lowell as well, wait until school gets out to do any of the major construction. So delay some of that. So that we don't have as big of an interface there or interruption from that side. And then we'll go through and we'll do the improvements for the curb and gutter on the Uplands side, adding sidewalks. We'll get into the paving operations probably later this fall. And then you get into wrapping up streetlights, dry utilities. Those are all, you know, so we're kind of progressing in the roadway out to the edges. And then traffic signals, we're focused right now on actually ordering those signals. We have our contractors lined up, and that's a long lead item that we have. So the signals at 84th and Lowell, 88th improvements, also 86th, like we just talked about here. And then we also have improvements at 84th and 88th on Federal. So we are ordering that material so we can put those elements in as quickly as possible. We're still working on federal approval from CDOT, and that's why that is pushed out just a little bit there. And then paving operations, when we get into the fall time frame, depending on the weather that we get, we can either pave, or if it gets too cold, we actually have to push some of it off till spring. And so that's why some of this you'll see actually pushing out into the spring of 25. We may actually get it done at the end of 24 or early part of 25, but because of weather, that's an element that may push out just a little bit longer. So you see all the major elements that we're working on here, and then very shortly, probably within the next month to month and a half, we'll be starting grading in the B1 parcel, which is just to the south of 84th and the north of Bradburn. So that project, we'll start with grading operations there, utilities, and so forth, and hope to pave that one out towards the end of this year. If not, again, from a weather perspective, into the spring of next year. And then we'll be pushing on Bradburn as well. We're trying to get that one done and get all that work improved probably before we even finish up the on-site work for B1. So that's something that we're going to try to expedite from our side as well. Those approvals are not finalized yet. We're very close to those though, but this is the projection of where we think after we get those approvals when we can start it. So next slide, please. This is just an overall summary. You're probably seeing this on our website. So again, we were kind of wrapping up the grading operations. We're starting that utility work. Some of the other things that you'll probably see first is not only internal site where we're going to start the sanitary sewer, but also working on 88th and 84th. We're putting in some major water line in those two corridors that will tie in through the site through Irving as well. So you'll see those two areas. Most of this stuff is on the edge, so it doesn't, really impede on the traffic that's out there today or the lanes that are out there today. So a lot of these improvements you're going to see on the edges, but they hopefully will not impact your daily life traveling through these areas. So that's just general, again, what you're going to see on the website. We keep that from a high level, but you're also seeing that schedule that gives you a little more detail from that side. Next one. And here you're seeing a graphical representation of what we have. The B1 that I was referring to is back down in here. So it's including Bradburn, and then it's also including the on-site work from that perspective as well. And the other thing that you'll see that we haven't detailed on there is you're going to start to see some utilities like the overhead power that's on 84th. One of our responsibilities is to actually take that down from being overhead and put that underground. So there's little ancillary projects that are being done in some of these other areas that you'll also see, but those should not be disturbing or interrupting traffic from that side. A lot of those improvements are off to the side of the road. They're just being prepped for other work that will be there in the future. So, next one, please. Just a quick synopsis on the grading side. So we start off with the site in its natural state where we acquired it from, and here's Shaw just to the south. And so what we did initially, as you saw there, is we went through and we put erosion control measures in place, so you weren't getting any of the soil going off the site, washing onto the roads. We built a large storm water facility down here, partially. The full one will be implemented when we get the FEMA approvals. You can go to the next one. And you got into the overall grading operation. And along with that, we were not only grading the site to provide a more level platform and also road configurations that met the city standards, we're also doing what's called sub-excavation of the site, where we go through, because we have clay soils, and those want to expand, we actually take those soils out, we treat them, we add water to them, and then they actually expand to a point that you should not get expansion in the future with the homes. And so that operation, if you go to the next one, that operation is something that happened throughout A, and we're actually finishing up our last area right now on A7, which is down in Federal and 84. So if you're seeing that operation going on where they're kind of digging a deeper hole in the ground, and you were kind of wondering what that was, that's the operation that we have going on the site. That will occur on some of the other parcels as we sell them to other builders, and we actually get final plans put together on some of the other sites. But on the majority of the site, on the western side, we've already taken care of that. And then also, like on the A7 parcel, so the parcels along 84th, we've taken care of this operation as well. And then what we're left with, you can go to the next slide, is really a platform for us for the lots, the streets, you see undercut in here, and then our next part of construction, which you'll see, is us coming in and starting to dig up those areas to put sanitary sewer, water, storm drainage into those street cores, and then putting concrete or sidewalks, curb gutter, and the asphalt paving, street lights, dry utilities. And so you'll get to a point then where we can start building homes on those lots that have been created.
Next slide, go ahead. We're gonna go transition now to the neighborhood engineering. Next slide, please. Go ahead.
So here is the B1 site again, and we can pull this up if we have any detailed questions on it, but what you're seeing in here is just the layout of where these lots and the homes will be.
Face us, we can't hear
Yeah, sorry, we're gonna have to just ask them for a little louder, John, or Todd, if you'll face out. One thing I just wanted to set this up, so we did site-wide again, right? That's what Todd was walking through, was the engineering that goes through. Now, this is transitioning to actual neighborhoods. So the reason we're showing you B1 is because B1 has been approved, right? So the ODP is approved, right? So now we're actually talking about the grading plan, as Todd mentioned, is in for city review. And then we will begin, as he indicated, sometime in the spring of '24 for drainage and operations here on this site. So Todd, then just so everybody can hear you, you were walking through what will happen as an example on B1.
Yeah, what you're seeing here is the overall layout for the street system, the alley system, and the red lines that are on this exhibit are actually the sanitary sewer lines that are there. The blue ones are the water and storm drainage is in the green. So this is the detailed engineering that we have put together for every one of those sites. And it's something that the city approves, and we will then go to construction with these elements.
Focusing in the planning details approved, then subsequent to the final engineering approved. That's the process that we work through on each one of the neighborhoods. Next slide. This shows it again for A2, the other neighborhood that we showed you that is approved, again, as we described here on Lowell, between 86th and 87th. That same detailing, that same process, again, the water lines, storm sewer lines coming through, all the detailing that we're doing. So a lot of people ask us, hey, what are you grading on the site? That was really what Todd talked about first. The overall grading, the excavation that's happening there. Then we come back, site-specific, neighborhood-specific, once we're approved and do the engineering for each respective neighborhood. Next slide. This is, we're going to have Todd stay pretty close here. This is a segment that we wanted to transition to. So each one of those neighborhoods will go through that process, and Todd and his team of engineers lead that, going through the different, with the city, the state, and all the regulatory agencies that work through. We now want to address a few specific questions that we have heard. These are questions that maybe came up at a planning commission or in neighborhood meetings. They're things you've asked us about and that we think we have a responsibility. Many of you that maybe live in the Shaw Heights neighborhood received a map or a letter, a notice about the floodplain and some mapping exercises. So we actually wanted to detail that process and provide a little background on what happens without Uplands, what happens during the Uplands process, and why you're receiving that information. So I'm actually going to have Brooke Seymour here, and Brooke will introduce her role and title, but give us a little background on the regulatory process that led to this. And we have 2 or 3 slides that address the floodplain issue. Brooke.
Good evening. I'm Brooke Seymour with the Mile High Flood District, and the Mile High Flood District, I'm guessing not everybody knows who we are here. So we're a public agency that was created to provide a regional approach to major drainage and streams within the 40 municipalities that cover the greater Denver area. So part of what the Mile High Flood District does is we partner with FEMA, both on the mapping side of mapping floodplains and also on the review side of updates, which would be a conditional letter of map revision or so conditional is before a project goes through, that's what the Uplands development has submitted is for a conditional letter of map revision. And then we also would review the follow-up letter of map revision once the project has been complete to update the mapping. So what we have here is the Shaw Heights tributary, which, there's no stream there today. It's all, roads, neighborhood homes. It developed before there were floodplain development regulations in place to protect the streams. The stream doesn't exist anymore. It is piped underground and flowing the streets. That study, so FEMA's maps today for the floodplain are based on a study the Mile High Flood District did back in 1978. So we know flood risk changes with time. We also have much better technology today to more accurately predict what that flood hazard area would be. And when I say flood hazard area, I'm talking about what's commonly called the 100-year flood. It's a high hazard area. There's certainly hazard areas outside of that that are just a little bit lesser hazard. So what this slide is showing here is the purple line, this one here for those that may have trouble with colors, is the 1978 floodplain. That's what's currently shown on FEMA's effective mapping. The green line is the updated existing conditions floodplain. So taking into account the latest and greatest information we have today to make our best accurate guess on what that existing conditions floodplain will be, that is what the green line is. And you can see, it's just different. It's a little bit greater in some areas, a little bit less in some areas. It's a lot more detailed because we have better information on what the ground elevations actually are today than they had back in the 70s.
Next slide.
Next slide.
So this shows, it's the exact same map we were looking at with the purple 1970 floodplain and the new updated existing conditions floodplain. But now the blue shading is showing what is proposed in the Uplands conditional letter of map revision that has been submitted to FEMA. And the reason that is lessened is the development is proposing a stormwater detention facility that actually holds stormwater during a flood event and then releases it slower than it would today, reducing the amount of water we would see downstream of the development in the future. So that's the proposed floodplain with the development in place.
So just to clarify, Brooke, you can certainly correct me. So the purple, the existing lines, the effective lines there, right? Then we see the green, that's the updated mapping that occurred separate from the Uplands process. That's the updated process that went on, the mapping, the changing technologies. And then with Uplands proposed solutions, this kind of lighter color blue is now the proposed with the Uplands plan. Okay, so we're showing a series of things. Is that accurate to show the different lines that are in place?
Yes, that's correct. And again, that reduction that you're seeing with the shaded blue with the development is because of that regional stormwater detention facility that would be implemented with the project.
Where's the facility?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Where's the facility?
It's on the site, so it's upstream of Lowell.
So here's Lowell, by the way. I think we all see it, Shaw, and that's of course down at Circle. Primarily that facility is here on the other side of Lowell. We can show that on a larger map when we come back.
Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. Next slide.
So this one, I guess just has the structures turned on now.
Yeah,
Showing, so the purple ones would be in, and then the green is what's remaining in the proposed condition based on the plumber that was submitted.
Yeah, so just so everybody thinks of this, some of you are maybe neighbors here in Shaw Heights or even on Shaw Boulevard. The purple are structures that are removed from the floodplain, right? So everything that's purple, because of the mapping exercises, the updates, this analysis, those are removed. There are, it looks like kind of 2 structures, maybe 4 structures here with that different color that are added because of the mapping, right? So as you go through that process, we're certainly acknowledging there's a house or I think a garage here and then one down there. Those green structures are added because of the change, the mapping, the analysis that goes through it. That's what we're showing here. So same lines apply, right? We're just basically turning on the structures so you can see what that means from a neighborhood perspective. Next slide.
Great, and Brooke is here, so she can answer more questions, certainly in more detail. We wanted to promise to try to work through it. We only have 5 more slides. Bonnie, go right ahead.
Yeah, so another question we've heard in a number of meetings is what does this site look like from the perimeter? So as we go through the official development plan process on the different neighborhoods, we're able to create realistic renderings of these views. So we have 3 views to show you. Again, this is focused on that center A square, but we'll walk through each of these locations. So this first one is along 84th, the north side of 84th, just east of Lowell Boulevard. So here you can see we have 2-story townhomes. Because of the topography on this site, this neighborhood actually sits below 84th Avenue. So that's what you can see here. So at the bottom of the screen, that is 84th Avenue. You can see our proposed tree lawn and sidewalk. And then these 2-story homes sit below 84th. So that's what the south side of A will look like.
It's generally just north of Bellevue Christian for everybody to think about that site.
Next slide. And then here's a view along Federal Boulevard. So this is just south of 88th Avenue on the west side of Federal. So again, kind of the bottom left of the screen, that is Federal. We have, again, a tree lawn sidewalk. We have a pretty enhanced buffer along Federal. There are walls and quite a bit of landscaping in here you can see to create that transition away from Federal, and then here what homes that are siding to Federal would look like in that location. And then here we have, this is a rendering of Lowell Boulevard. This is adjacent to that 82 neighborhood we referenced a few times. So this is generally between 86 and 87 on the east side of Lowell. So these are paired homes. That you can see again, goals right here. We have the tree lawn and sidewalk, and then a landscape transition before we get to those 2-story homes.
Great, just a few things just to provide additional information. So if you want to see these maps, our website is uplandcolorado.com. Again, our job is to try to provide as much information as we can on schedules, keep those updated. This is more for construction to really tell about that. So that's the website. Next slide. We have all of these. You can go right there to construction and be showing. This also shows the city, how they're participating in that, really providing that. There's the Westminster, the city's website address where you can find that. And then also if you sign up, we have a monthly newsletter where we're trying to provide that information as well. So again, our job is really to try to keep you updated on that. Again, we're not debating tonight. We're talking about is Uplands moving forward. We're showing you the process it goes through. Neighborhoods are being approved, things are moving forward, but we want to detail that process. Next slide. And I think that's it. We're going to go to question and answers. I again want to just say up front, I want to thank the city manager Freitag is here, and a number of senior leadership. So we think it's really important. They wanted to have this meeting. We thought it was a terrific idea to really continue to work with all of you. So with that, we've got a whole group of folks here. People have questions. We're happy to go through them and try to go back to slides. Yes, Karen, first.
A number of questions.
Let's start with one, and then we'll go to somebody else and come back to you.
You guys have stormwater discharge permits for all this grading that you're doing. Anything within the 100-year floodplain is supposed to be having these stormwater discharge permits that I don't think you guys.
So, sorry, I'm not so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you at all. So the question is, just so I can repeat it, and I'll probably say it incorrectly, but I'll repeat it so we can get an answer out there and everybody can hear it. Do we have stormwater permits? What permits do we have in place, Todd, for the grading that's happening on the site today? And then probably a little follow-up on the Shaw Boulevard improvements as well.
Yeah, we have the state permit that's required, and we also have the city's approval on the grading operations and erosion control.
Do you have permits?
The grade, yes, graph disturbance.
We have permits from the state and from the city for the operations that we're doing.
So all operations that are happening today, we have their permitted operations. That's it. Karen, I promise I'll come right back to you. Question right after. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear the young lady when she was speaking back here.
Okay.
I live on Circle.
Okay, sure.
So that light blue area that you were talking about, is that where the water is supposed to come down?
Yes.
So,
Restate it. Is this map okay towards the end of this? So you're here on Circle, right? And it's fine, just in this area. And maybe Brooke, if that's okay, or Todd, just to follow up on particularly this light blue, I'm going to interpret something you said. Is that where the water's supposed to go down? It kind of looks like a watercolor, right? Maybe we shouldn't have chosen that color, right? But I think what we're trying to show, maybe what is that color there? And what does that mean from a water flow standpoint?
Yeah.
I'll try and speak louder. Can you hear me okay? Maybe I'll come to this side. So yeah, the blue shading is just showing that is an identified high hazard flood zone. So it's equivalent to what people talk about called a 100-year floodplain. That is that would be the 100-year floodplain with the development in place. So it's actually reduced from the existing condition.
So if we're showing you, I think, Brooke, this is fair. Just pretend this blue wasn't here. The first one we showed was the structures or the purple lines, right? That would be a solid color. That's the original map. The green now shows the updated, and then the blue, we made that solid. It could be two lines, but the blue is the updated Uplands mapping because of the detention and facilities we're putting here, right? So that shows how it's changing, it's shrinking, right? It's much less covered by that in the 100-year, but that's what we're trying to depict in that. But you also then have to acknowledge the structures around it, right? You're here somewhere, right? And how does it affect those structures? Primarily, we pulled all of these in the purple out of the floodplain, right? But there are two structures that are getting brought into it because of the mapping exercise. Okay. John. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Just 1 second. Karen, go ahead. Sure.
Could you just explain the 1%, the increase in the 1% flooding area, which year before did not go up Shaw Boulevard where the school is. Now you're putting the Learning Center as a flooded, 100-year flood insurance building, and you've extended the 1% flood zone to the north, correct? And that was not the direction the water went to in your 2014 or 1978 study. So you changed, you're changing the flow, is that correct?
So I think just to, and Karen, I know I'll miss a few details, but one thing I just want to show kind of going through where your question is going is really focused here, right, in this area, talking about maybe how the map has changed. Again, the purple, the green, and then you see the blue of Uplands here. As it kind of goes to this area, what does that go? You also talked a lot about 1%. Brooke, if you don't mind, why is that? What's the 1% mean? The effective 1% floodplain and the proposed 1%. What is that about? That requirement?
Yeah, so it's a 1% annual chance of exceedance. So there's a 1% chance any given year, 1 year, that event will occur or be exceeded. So over multiple years, that chance goes up quite a bit. So over a 30-year mortgage, you have 26% of the chance of being flooded if you're the 1% annual chance event, commonly called the 100-year floodplain. And then your specific question about that area is it's in both the existing conditions. It's in both the existing conditions, so the update of what the flood hazard is today, and in the updated one with the Uplands project in place. And that is just it's a little bit technical, it might be easier to talk about offline, but basically the floodplain is a width thing, it's spreading out that far. The topo is showing the elevation of the ground, it's showing that it has to go that wide in order to contain all of that water that we're estimating will be there.
So can I ask a question about, and again, the follow-up was this, you didn't say it in a negative way, like a strategy. It was, did we design it that way to flow to the northwest? So Todd, maybe that, or because you evaluate it, we submit the materials to you all. Todd, is that something we designed to go that way, or how is that going? The one thing I want to be sure and show, this green line here again, that's the updated mapping that does not have anything to do with Uplands. Okay, I just want to start there. So that is in that. That's why Brooke said that's already in that existing area. The blue shows how we're pulling that in a little bit, Karen, not a lot, right? But that green is the updated mapping that happens without Uplands. The blue interior is the Uplands solution, the addition to that. So just to clarify. Talk.
Yeah, and Rick was talking to these points, and what you had back in the 70s when the original report was put together is you had data that wasn't as accurate as we have today. So today we can go out and we can actually get things a lot closer. This may have been mapped, you know, with a 2-foot interval in the case where that likelihood that was off that much. Whereas today we can get to within inches when we actually go out and do surveys. So that's why you were seeing, like, this area was always in the floodplain. It just had the mapping that did not represent what it was seen, you know, when it was originally mapped. So it hasn't changed from that physical condition. And then the blue is what is being modified or actually reduced because of the facility that Uplands is putting in place. So that detention facility is actually not only accounting for what the city regulations are, we've cut that flow in half to help the situation even more. So hopefully you want to add any more to that, to the data side of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's a few more questions. We'll come back. John, you're next. Yeah, and then here.
Your map here does not reflect any of the outfall water from the property as it travels down 84th and on the circle and to the shop portal.
So I'm going to ask it, John. You made kind of more of a statement, but I'm going to restate it, right, and ask that question, right? So the question is, does this area include the outfalls from what's happening on the B parcels, B1, B2 approved in the future as we go through that process, if it's approved in the future? And of course, that's over here on Bradburn, right? So wait, just south of this area, sorry. So this is 85th, 84th, south of here. Are the calculations included in this, or how is that analyzed as part?
Yeah. So 84th, where we're making the connection, maybe we can go to.
Just a site map. It might be easier to show a site map. I think you're doing it. Yeah.
Or you actually have, yeah.
Right.
Go to the B, so maybe 2 ahead.
Okay. There you go. One more. Sorry, this isn't it. There you go. There we go. So this is the B1 neighborhood. Go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 84th right here, and we are putting in another detention facility that is going to account for all of B1 and all of B2. So right now, this drainage comes off, runs over this area into some homes that are here, runs across this area into these homes. We are controlling all of that flow by directing it. One, you see this green line here. So we're picking everything up that's on this B2 parcel south of Bradburn. We're collecting it. We're routing it to the north detention facility. We're routing all of this internally to this detention and water quality facility. And then this outfall is being built to the storm system that is in Circle. So it connects to that same system. This detention facility is also reducing flows down from what is historic going back out onto 84.
Yeah, so we can't probably say that loud enough. I've got a very loud voice. Is what we're proposing here, what is being built there, over what happens today, we are reducing the amount of flow that comes off the site. So John, to be more particular about, yeah, so how are we reducing that, and how does that analysis go through there? Are we reducing the flow from the current flows that run through this site today?
Yes.
Okay,
We're
answer is
reducing,
yes.
we're reducing the flow that is just running across these fields today onto 84 into these homes. We're directing it to the facility, and it's holding the water longer, and we're reducing the flow that's coming out of here, what historically was getting onto 84th and just running through this area.
The only way, and we're not going to go through like the math exercise, it's a very complex, I'm not an engineer, but the way you know this is true, what we're saying is, again, the old maps, 70s technology, the updated maps, and then the Uplands map is reducing that further. That is the point of, we are putting in additional detention facilities here or across Lowell that are reducing that footprint. We are making improvements to that. That is part of the process. We give it to Mile High Flood. They map it. They go through that process and understand it and go through that. So that's the process we're working through. So it is happening. Yes, sir, here, and then I'll come back.
Just interesting to see it like a contour map of the area.
Yeah.
Federal appears to me, the east side of Federal is high ground.
Yes, sir.
And then Federal just drops off to the side.
Yeah.
See what you're doing with all that drop off on the west side of Federal.
Yeah.
General comment about maybe kind of the contour of the site, yeah.
Go to over.
Yeah, the one, like, sir, I'll give you an example, even more west of there, from Irving along 84th, all right? Think of where Bonnie showed that view along 84th, between Irving Street and Lowell. Just in that section, we have a 50-foot fall from, you know, west, right, or from east to west there, right? And from really where Old Shaw Boulevard used to go on Lowell, that's a 65-foot fall, right? So thinking of how that happens. That's why we show a lot of this grading that's happening on the site.
Or this, either is fine. Okay, so detention facilities, we're just talking about this one right here at 84th. This is the B one, so it's collecting this area right here and connecting it back to this form. This element right here is the major facility that we have that we were talking about that's knocking the flows down from the overall A parcel. And then it is going to build a storm system down Shaw and connecting to the existing system there. But that blue line that we were showing is the reduction of what this facility is doing. So you're correct in that bedroll is really the dividing line, and everything within this area really flows back down to this facility. So
It's a very astute. So we got a few more questions. I'm gonna come back to this room, but if anybody on this side wants to ask, you may. Karen first and then back row. Karen Glavy, I apologize, sir, yes.
You're showing in your schematic all these sidewalk connections, and then apparently you're gonna have a 10-foot retaining wall along 84. What kind of pedestrian connection does that allow?
Yeah. So repeating the question again, a really good question. We're showing all those graphics. We have an overall infrastructure map that shows pedestrian improvements, right? Along Lowell and 84th. Bonnie, that shows that, but then we show the walls on there. What does that pedestrian fabric really feel like, right?
Yeah, so high level, it's focused, your question I think was focused on this neighborhood based on that rendering we showed. So along here, we have a sidewalk that is along 84th, and then the site steps down. It's not a 10-foot wall. I believe we have a 4-foot maximum height in that location. So it steps 4 feet down to the proposed homes. So we do, as the grade kind of fluctuates through the neighborhood, we have some breaks in that wall and some meandering walks that get down to those homes. So not every single home has a direct connection to that walk on 84th, but we have a few key locations along 84th that you can get from that main east-west walk to the homes and to the parks inside.
So, but one question maybe, Bonnie, just as a pedestrian, I'm walking on 84th, we put a new crosswalk here, and I walk to that sidewalk. I don't want to overstate, that's at the same grade. The infrastructure, the perimeter infrastructure is connecting. Why we are showing that transition, as Bonnie described, the walls is stepping down to the individual residences,
I understand
right?
that they're showing connections, two-dimensional connections.
Those happen. Those connections happen at the sidewalk level. So one thing we have done very intently is focus on our perimeter connections, right? The trails, the sidewalks, all of those things happen at grade, right? Then we're asking for some exceptions as we go through for the neighborhood on site, on lot, on my house that I buy, not the public domain where you walk. That's the whole point, is to allow the perimeter to embrace the existing neighbors. So we're doing exactly what you're asking us to do.
Now, are you going to be, is one of the exceptions going to be a wall taller than 4 foot?
We have not asked for an exception for a tall wall.
Is there an exception for a wall taller than 4 foot? That was the question. This is a really detailed question. Karen knows our process really well on the neighborhood planning process. As we go through each one of those neighborhoods that we detailed, you have to ask design exceptions as you go through. Again, what we're addressing here, from here to here, is a 50-foot change in grade as you move this way. So you're effectively balancing the site. But what we're doing is keeping the pedestrian elements at grade. Back row first, then I'll come over here and then John. Yes.
I'm not an engineer.
No, me either. We'll be great together.
Now, on that retention pond there.
Sure.
That's the big one, that's gonna flow down this Shaw.
Uh-huh.
When you're saying it's gonna flow down Shaw.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna.
What's that mean?
Let's just say you've got this big swimming pool like a pond here. is there like what do you call it, a drain, a drain that maybe goes under the street that is going to flow down to where, see, I live really close to the learning center.
Sure.
Where the drain is. So is it going to go through there? And I know that drain empties out into Oak Park. It doesn't go out of stage. So is that what I'm learning here? Is you're going to have this big retention pond, and then it's going to just release water a little at a time in this underground storm drain that's going to go.
That's terrific. It's a really good question. Maybe John, or go ahead, Todd, and I'll try to demonstrate what you're talking about.
Well, I thought you wanted to be articulate.
Well, no, I think your question's great, right? How's it happen? Maybe Todd, I may ask one modification. How's it happen today?
Yep.
And then how's it happen after this comes in? Okay, so you can think of it that way.
Yeah, so just as I was explaining on the B parcel, because everything's just running across the fields today, right onto the streets. The same thing occurs on the A parcel, is it's all running down Shaw, uncontained, basically, right? So we're putting it into that facility. It goes through what we call an outlet structure, so everything is monitored and regulated, so it only releases a certain amount of flow. And we are constructing a storm system down that street, so a pipe down that street, so it's not just running down the street anymore uncontrolled. So the minor storm will be in that pipe, they'll be taken down to Circle, where they connect into another storm system that's already down there today.
So it's all underground, Todd.
Yeah, all underground. Today it's not. Today it's on street, right? Or across your low. So we're now putting it in, taking it down to here. The other key thing is we hold it here longer. So we reduce the flow so it can go that way. That's how it's happening. Karen.
Although in your Flowmar report, you specifically say that your overflow will go into the Shaw Allen's ditch. That's plainly stated in there, that you don't have the expectation that you will, in a 100-year flood event, or something like we had in 2013, was 100 years ago. Many of us remember 2013. We had major flooding take place throughout the region, and the basements of people who lived on Shaw Boulevard and Circle Drive were very badly impacted through that. Your plan, and I understand you want to put a pipe underground, which is great, should have been done probably 30 years ago. And I'm sad for residents who seem to have bought property when the city was knowledgeable that the floodplain had changed and did nothing about it, chose instead to wait until somebody bought the land and perhaps would put in some mitigation. But is it really accurate to say that your plan is really going to keep everything in the pipes in a 100-year event, or if we ever get rain again in this state, is it going to really stay in the pipes, or is your plan, like stated in your Flowmar report, to use Shaw Boulevard as your drainage outlet and Allen's Ditch, which is wetlands, as a receptacle for the rainwater runoff, which will be polluted road wastewater?
Karen, let us.
We don't have a cleaning facility.
Yeah, no, let us answer that. You've asked it twice. Let us answer the question. That's great. Yeah. So we show the maps a lot tonight. Brooke, you've gone through them, Todd, on the 100-year floodplain, right? So we've shown that, right? You certainly understand that. If it's more than a 100-year event, what's the process for that, and how does that work?
Well, there's two things that you're talking about here, so let's clarify everything on it. The site is being directed down towards the purple pond that's shown there, and that is being put into the outlet structure and then put into the storm system. There are other areas, though, that still funnel down to Shaw, okay, or drain down to Shaw. Those areas are part of the 100-year conveyance. Okay, so there's areas that we cannot get into our pond off of existing homes that are on the other side of Shaw, or any of that area that's, an example would be is
The Berkeley Homes Project.
there's areas in here, okay, that drain to Shaw today. There's areas in here that drain to Shaw today. We cannot get those physically into our facility So we have done whatever we can to control as much as possible into our facility, especially on our site. And there's just natural areas that are going to get to Shaw anyways. That's part of the total 100-year flows that are coming down Shaw today, and that we're still reducing to that matter.
Great. So folks, yeah, please, Brooke, go right ahead. I want to set the table. We're right at 6:30. We've got 2 hands raised, so we'll go here and then we'll certainly have 2 more questions from there.
I
Brooke.
want to address one thing I've heard a couple times. I've heard the term 2014 fad thrown out there. So we started a study for Little Dry Creek and its tributaries, which includes Shaw Creek tributary, in 2014. We do not yet have mapping developed for it, so we have nothing to share yet. We will be doing public outreach and sharing once we get to the study to the place that we have rack mapping that people can take a look at. So I think there might be some misunderstanding about this 2014 study that I want to clarify.
It's like a week before, after this,
Yeah. There's all
It's
the
a-
sheet drainage that come off of these.
So folks, I know you're asking really fair questions. People are recording it, so we're trying to be sure we can hear it, right? So when you ask the follow-up, so the 2014, Brooke, that process that started, initiated in 2014, I think the follow-up to that was, yeah, but do you consider Uplands as you go through that process as well, right? So the answer is yes, Uplands is updating that information as well. But this is the process that we're going through on Shaw specifically that we're going through. So I know there's 2 more questions. So yes, that's going through. There was one over here and then back to John. Yes, please.
I realize lots of stakeholders in play, the city, with the developer,
Sure.
with the Mile High Flood District, and obviously all of this, you guys are engineers, scientists, it's numbers at the end of the day, and this is where the numbers lie. I guess I'm wondering, like, kind of like you said, there's additional things that are contributing to flood levels.
There's additional, sorry, one last thing. There's additional what was that last part?
There's additional streets, additional surface area that's contributing to the floods. Again, worst case event for 100-year flood event on Shaw. Was there consideration, I guess, by one of the players, stakeholders, just kind of like how we're doing these improvements already? What can be done? I don't know, that maybe the city can say, hey, how do we alleviate these multiple, along Westminster as a Westminster citizen? What can we do to help with all the rainfall that's coming off the football field up there, or the soccer field, all that kind of stuff, and it's coming all down, you know, there's like 4 side streets that all start to lose.
Well, what I can tell you to one part of your question is, has all of the area that is contributing down and will get to Shaw and flow down Shaw, has that been accounted for? Yes. So even though, you know, not everything can get to a facility that Uplands is building, everything that is, you know, within that basin, we call it, is still being accounted for. And that's also part of the updates that are being done. So when that Clomar, the line that you saw there for the Clomar, the blue line, and where that water surface is going to be, that's taking into account everything. So the area, like you're saying, like on the fields, or like I was pointing out to you, there's areas to the south here that drain into Lowell and actually go down Shaw as well. All of that area is covered in the analysis.
I understand, we agree on that one. I guess the question was there opportunity, or did the governing body at some point push back to say, hey, we also alleviate the problem and consider some of the others and influence going elsewhere? I know as a developer, right, like you guys are doing as best as you can, taking care of your plot, but like there's still other things contributing to the problem.
So is it fair, like Todd, just thinking about the question, so you're asking as other areas, right, that flow there or may flow that are not being captured in Uplands or other city facilities, is there a way where we directed to think about those, even if they're offsite of that? The other thing I would say is maybe Todd, just when you go through this process, right, if I'm a property owner here, right, if I'm a property owner here, when do they have to come up with the new plan, the new drainage submittals and go through that process? How does that happen?
I'll maybe let Brooke touch on that one for a second, but what I would also tell you to your question is that Uplands has actually taken on a larger responsibility than they're required to. And we have done, to your question, what else could we do? We looked at everything we could to get as much storm into the facility that we have. And like I mentioned before, we're allowed to release X. We cut X in half and also, you know, pulled a lot of those properties out of the floodplain that you saw on Shaw. So we have done whatever we could physically do, you know, to help the situation, but, you know, it can't help everything from that side. But I think maybe the other part of your question of like, when do these other ones look at it, or other things to do? That's part of the master planning that's done for the entire area. And that's something that Mile High Flood District does look at and takes into, you know, account. And also they work very closely with the city too.
Yeah,
So I'll let them kind of,
I guess there's another question. Is there anything left on Mile High Flood District's desk that you guys are pushing back on? Because I know you've had multiple things. You said, hey, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see this, and it's been a multi-step process. Is there anything left, or is it that you guys are still waiting for amendments on, or that your contractors are still running numbers on?
Yeah, so as we talked about, the conditional letter of map revision has been through the technical review process. And that process did go back and forth. We had a number of comments were addressed, we reviewed it again. So it has been through the technical review. We wait till the technical review is complete until we send out property owner notifications, so we make sure we're sharing something that is technically sound. If you do it early in the process, you have to re-notify, and we're notifying based on something that hadn't been technically reviewed yet. So the technical review part of the process has already taken place. So all of our comments have been addressed.
So I'm going to come back. Yeah, please. It's okay. We're about 5 minutes over. A couple quick follow-ups. Yes.
Yeah, I guess is the process.
Yeah.
It's still open to any third-party review
So-
or suggestions.
Yeah, so I would say this as we look at, the question is, you know, the two structures that may have come into the mapped area, right? Are there, as we look at, you talked about the 2014 analysis, are there other things in the future? Nobody's making any profit. Like, is that something that gets considered, or how does that happen?
I can answer this. So a conditional letter of map revision does not change map. So there's no appeal process involved with it. The letter of map revision that will come to FEMA following the development, that will change the mapping, and that does have an appeal process associated with it. So it would come in the future, but again, there's no appeal process with the conditional letter of map revision because it doesn't actually change the mapping yet.
Great.
So does that
Yep.
mean you've given the okay and they can start doing this?
It is not approved yet. It still has to go through several steps on FEMA's process. But the technical review part of it has been, it's gone through that.
Technical review's been completed. Last question, John Palmer, because I said I'd call on you. Yes.
Okay. Can you explain this 100-foot barrel dirt?
Sure.
That's growing daily?
Yeah.
As well as the one over on Old, my house that's going up 30 foot tall. And also, I'd like to back up and reiterate that you didn't bother to talk about the Sunset Open Space project.
Great. Thank you for pointing that out. You're very detailed. You're good at that. I'll come back to that one last. So Todd, if you could address the question was the 100-foot, the mound that's happening. Is that kind of over here? You tell me where it's at. And then also the smaller mound here, what's going on there? Yep, Todd will know. Yep.
Yeah, so they're not finished with the grading operation yet, of course.
Well, where's all this dirt gonna go?
Sure. We'll answer your question. Let us answer the question.
Yeah, so there's gonna be about 150,000 cubic yards of leftover after we finish off grading the entire site. 50 of that will come down to balance this site. The other 50 will come back over into this area. And then we're looking at potential of options within here, or because we don't have the final plans done for these areas, there might be some tweaks that are made to that. And they also, just again, reiterating, they have not finished the grading operation. So what happens is that when they're doing the overax operation, they take material out and they create the larger mounds that you're seeing out there. And then that starts to eventually all fill back in the holes and some of the other areas.
It's not happening. I watch daily, this man across the street gets higher daily.
So
While
is,
semi scrapers go in, and have load after load after load. It's not reducing, it's getting more and more and more.
But they're not done with the operation.
we're not saying that on a daily basis that it's reducing. That process has to be completed. So is it likely, you're 100% accurate, that it's actually having some more put on it now? Yes, that's the process. Will that be reduced? Is that in any of the final topography that'll be on the site?
Not at all. That's the temporary grading that we're going through.
Yeah, but
on the
within
site now.
60 days of stockpiling, we're supposed to be vegetating and do slope that is.
Great.
good
So
for-
last question, I'm going to stop here because I promised everybody, and more importantly to Crown Castle, we will stay, we can have additional questions. Is there a requirement on timeline, revegetating, how that goes through? Is that 60 days after the operation is complete?
Well, the entire site's gonna be disturbed for the next 12 months plus, right? So even though we can finish grading here, we will turn around and we will start putting sanitary sewer in the ground, or storm or water,
Yeah, but
finish
you're
the
not supposed to
streets.
have exposed soil out there for
So
longer than
any
60
areas
days, a
that
season,
are
a season.
finished,
We're answering here.
any areas that are finished will be seeded and
Yeah,
reestablished.
but you're talking
So-
about a 20-year project.
Right.
But does that mean that for 20 years, you're gonna have?
So that's why we worked really hard. I'm going to end it here. That's why we worked really hard to show the overall grading and then the neighborhoods. That's why we showed you B1 and A2.
Are not answering
Then,
the question.
no,
about
I'm absolutely answering the question. When we are completed, we have that timeline kicks in. No, on each site. So we certainly understand it. It is being disturbed, as was accurately described here, and we have those photos, so we will go
This is a
through that.
20-year project, so this is gonna be disturbed.
As you go through a large development, folks, I do want to say, I want to thank you all very much for being
You're supposed to
patient
be
and kind.
And do slopes within a
Ma'am,
certain.
I can answer your question
not
if you'll
20
let me.
years.
Listen, just because you say we're not following the process does not mean we're not following the process. We are following the process.
You're following
We
your
go
process.
through the
You're
regulatory,
not following the best
and I
management.
want to thank everybody. I'm going to end it here. I do want to say it's available again online. Thank you, Crown Point, and anybody who wants to say extra, we're happy to go through any additional questions. I'm so sorry. There's a red dot. I have to, I promise. There's a red dot offside that's at Sunset. Will you tell what that red dot is offsite?
Yeah,
There's
those
a meeting in
are,
Westminster City next week. Are you guys involved in that too?
Yes, that is one of our neighborhoods. I'll grab you right after that. Yes.
so the red dot, that's off-site, are sewer improvements that are being done by the city of Westminster. So they're improvements that Uplands is paying for. It's some downstream capacity issues that were identified as part of our process in looking at the overall project. And so that project is currently being designed by the city right now. And I don't have an exact date of when that'll be. It'll be fixed before we get to a point where it's going to exceed capacity by any homes that we're going to add.
Great.
So.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Do you know anything about the little